Daniel Roberts,
And I'm Roger Price.
and you're listening to Artifacts from Highline, where we'll be bringing you stories about some of the artifacts and exhibits we have at the Highland Heritage Museum.
And some of the artifacts we have in the collections room also that are of interest to maybe different people. So that's we're going to try and introduce some new topics to the museum.
So thank you for tuning in. I hope you find some of these interesting stories and enjoy.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Price, and I'm at the museum this afternoon, and I'm here with Daniel Roberts in the radio booth, and we're going to talk about something that we have on display here in the museum, and it's about compasses that were used for navigation a long, long time ago. So Daniel's going to kind of get started on his compass knowledge.
Yeah, so I mean, compasses have been around for quite a while. The first ones were invented roughly around the second century BC or BCE to the first century CE or AD, whichever you prefer. And that was done in China under during the Han Dynasty. But instead of like for travel or orientation at the time, it was used for divination, fortune telling, and geomancy, or even finding precious gems. Uh, even they even used it in things like feng shui to determine where to build houses, and so it was all sorts of different things. Even though people had known about magnetite, they didn't really know a purpose for it at the time. And so early compasses used lodestone, which is a form of mineral magnetite, and the earliest forms would have a lodestone tied to a rope and freely hanging. Other times they would shape the lodestone into a spoon or a ladle, and the handle would then point to the south, which was a little bit surprising when I read up about that.
Oh, yeah, sure. That doesn't sound logical to me, but
Probably just how it's shaped, and then yeah.
uh-huh.
But anyways, in the 11th century, the Chinese military used the compass for navigational orientation and naval orienteering in the 12th century. At this point, compasses were made of magnetized iron instead of lodestone, and they called it the south pointing fish, which was a magnetized iron fish that floated in a bowl of water and would point south. There was later a turtle compass that was a dry compass, and the main part being a wooden turtle that had a lodestone in it, which was fixed with wax and had a needle point sticking out. The turtle was balanced on a bamboo needle, and it allowed it to freely rotate with the needle pointing north. It was also around the 12th century that compasses started appearing in Europe, and they used them for the same purposes. They're floating, uh, or they had like both. They had like the floating compasses and then the dry ones. The floating compasses were used for astronomical purposes, and the dry compasses for seafaring. This had improved their sailing because beforehand they had to rely on the sun or the stars, and they had limited sea travel between October and April. And then what this did is it allowed them to easily travel year round. Also in the Islamic world, they adapted those two compasses previously mentioned, and what they also did is they used a dry compass to help them orient themselves towards Mecca for prayer. And essentially, what I do is it still pointed north, but then they would have like a list of cities, and it'd be like, "This is north. If you're in this city, face this way. This is where you can pray to be facing Mecca."
Oh,
Uh, The main kinds of compasses are magnetic compasses and gyro compasses. The magnetic ones use a magnetic element like a needle or a card that aligns itself with the magnetic lines on the Earth's magnetic field to point towards the magnetic poles of Earth. Sorry for saying the word magnetic multiple times. Uh, but the gyro compass, on the other hand, had a rapidly spinning wheel whose rotation interacts with the rotation of Earth until its axis of the rotation is parallel of Earth. And so it points towards the Earth's rotational poles, which would be pointing to the true poles of no Earth. So that kind of magnetic north and then true north, I believe.
Uh-huh, sure.
But there's also several different kinds of magnetic compass types. For example, you have the liquid compass, where a magnetized needle or card is immersed in fluid to lessen the swing and wobble, and making it more reliable and reducing on its wear and tear. You also had a marine compass, where the needle is fixed and the compass card is mounted in a fluid and it rotates based on orientation. This one was used on boats since the moving card would absorb a lot of the motion of the boat and make it easier to read. There was also a prismatic compass that had a glass prism or lens and a lid that has a hairline. They were used for like lining up an object and whose bearing was sought, and it also used the compass card that rotates in the base. When the card stops, the required bearing is read through the prism, and some of these would use tritium and a combination of phosphoruses to make it easier to read in the dark. There's also the orienteering compass, which was a liquid-filled compass with a rectangular base made from transparent plastic so that a map could be read through it. And they could also have a magnifying glass or lights attached to it. And a smaller version would be called the thumb compass. And I'm pretty sure this is the one I was more familiar with as a kid when I was in Boy Scouts.
Oh, sure it was. Yes.
And there's also solid state compasses found in electrical devices. They use two or three magnetic field sensors, which would then have the microprocessor read the data on the orientation of the device, and then those can be found on phones or tablets. Or you also have the GPS compass that uses satellites to show the exact location of the user.
Oh, yes. Yeah. All these satellites now, should be able to get a good bearing on what you're looking for or what you're trying to. I've always, I think my first introduction into compasses when I was taking forestry at Green River College, and whether it was in the forestry class or the surveying class, used it a lot for boundaries and setting up, property boundaries and different things, and it was worked out pretty good. I know I worked for the Forest Service two different summers back in '69 and '71, and I had uh, a a good compass then, and so it was a valuable piece of my field uh, work that I had to do with the Forest Service. So and I still to this day still have that compass and my vest that I used to wear when I was. I didn't do a lot of survey because I was mostly into uh, cruising and timber management and identifying trees to be taken down by uh, loggers when there was more logging done in the Pacific Northwest. Now it seems like they just they let them if they don't burn down, they fall down because they rotted out. So I don't know what the deal is. But anyway, back to the compasses. That was kind of very interesting, Daniel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had no idea how there's that many different compasses, and it's certainly just kind of interesting to read on how they developed. I could get it like how people made observations that no matter what, these lodestones always seem to be pointing the same direction, and finding that kind of interesting.
Uh-huh.
And just how it developed from more spiritual practices to more practical, like everyday practices.
Oh, of course. Yeah, well, I know that I'm not sure how they come up with that inclination. I think it's because there's a magnetic north and then the true north are two different bearings, but I think the true north is takes 12 or 22 degrees off of the magnetic north, and that's your real north. Yeah.
That
So,
sounds about right. I remember reading it years ago, and I'm
uh-huh.
pretty sure they went over it when I was in Boy Scouts for the orienteering merit badge, but that's been a couple decades.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's something that I've forgotten, but I know it seems like for some reason I think 22 degrees was the setting you set on your compass to get the true north. So I'll have to maybe do a little more uh, research into that, but it's 12 or 22 degrees.
For sure. Well, it's always interesting to read, especially on something that's a very useful tool. I imagine, if you're out in the wilderness, it can be very life-saving even, but
No, sure, it can save lives if you have a compass. And whenever you're going hiking, it's probably a good idea to have one along, unless you're just going to go along a designated trail. But when you start wandering away from the trails, then compass is good to have because you want to know just exactly where your north and south and east and west is. So,
for sure, you know, absolutely better to have something and not need it than to need something and not have it. But yeah, well, that was interesting to also hear about your use of it in the Forest Service. But anything else you'd like to add?
well, I think you covered a lot of today, so that was pretty good.
Last thing I'd like to add about the compass is just how important it was for exploration. It allowed sailors to know what direction they were going in, even if they didn't have landmarks or land to rely on. The compass would always let them know which direction they were heading. This allowed for the expansion of trade and for the spread of knowledge. It also allowed for colonization of new parts of the world, which had the pros and cons. Either way, I hope you folks found some of this interesting, and I hope you'll join us again next time. Thank you for listening.